This is Saturday, and the day before I'm going to make my muffins. I had some frozen strawberries, and I let them thaw a little bit, and I'm going to cut them up into cubes and put them on my sheet pan flat so that they can then freeze and not get all mushy in my muffins. So I thought about doing just slices, but I'm not sure that's going to have a really good mouthfeel, so instead I've opted to do diced pieces. So that's how I'm going to do these. And then I'm just going to let them freeze into, individual pieces here overnight, and then when I make my muffins tomorrow, they won't discolor my batter because they'll be frozen. All right? I'm going to use pistachios in my streusel. You could use pecans, almonds, the walnuts that the recipe calls for. If you're using raw nuts, they don't say anything about toasting them in the recipe. If you wanted to add a little depth of flavor, you could toast your half a cup of nuts in like a saute pan for just a little bit, just till you start to smell them. You don't want to burn them. And then that would add a little dimension. My pistachios that I'm using are dry roasted already, so it's not necessary for me to toast them. So all I'm going to do is give them a chop. If you have a food processor, you could make your streusel in your food processor. I have one, but I'm just doing it by hand so that I can show those of us who don't have one. All right, so just a rough chop to break up your nuts. And again, the nuts are optional. You don't have to include any nuts if you don't want to do that. But these pistachios are going to be really good with the strawberry and the lemon flavor. About like that. Some of them obviously are smaller, some are bigger. You're going to have that when you're hand chopping stuff. Oh, they smell good too. All right, so that's how you hand chop them. All right, for the streusel, we've got our 1/3 cup of brown sugar. All right, we've got a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. And we've got our 1 tablespoon of butter. And then we're just gonna work it all together by hand. Again, you could do this in the food processor if you want. I'm just gonna work the butter into the ingredients until it becomes kind of a coarse meal. And we're just trying to get everything mixed together nice and even. Get the butter evenly incorporated on things. This is a topping for the muffins. All right, so it should look like that. Kind of damp sand. For zesting your citrus, you want to wash it and dry it because you don't know what was crawling around on it in transport. And if you don't have a zester, you want to just get the light yellow part. You don't want the white part. That's got pith and it's kind of bitter. So you want to have no white, okay? And then you just kind of rough chop that into small pieces. Kind of dice it up if you do not have a zester. All right, so use your peeler and use a knife and chop it up like you're mincing garlic. Again, you're just going to, you don't want to get into the white, just the nice oily part, whether it's a lime and an orange or a lemon. All right, we need a tablespoon of zest probably 1 lemon, 1 orange, maybe 2 limes if you're using limes. Okay. Lemon zest. Making buttermilk. So I have whole milk here. If you have skim milk, you'll probably want to use less. Use less. All right, don't use a full cup. Use 3/4 of a cup. All right. And I need a tablespoon of lemon juice. I'm just gonna eyeball it. Don't get the seeds in there. Okay, that was a tablespoon, I would say. Let's give it a stir. And we're gonna let it set for 5 minutes and it'll thicken up. You can still do this with your 2%, okay? But use less liquid, so use 3/4 of a cup and still use a tablespoon of lemon juice to give it that acidity, okay? This time our oven is gonna be on 400. If you don't have a muffin pan, you might have a loaf pan. You could make a quick bread loaf instead. Here's little loaves. If you don't have any of that, you could use like a smaller, like 8x8, or this one's like 7x4 or something, but smaller pans. A cake pan, one of your like round 9x9, 10x10 cake pans, you could make a cake out of it. If you don't have liners, go ahead and spray with pan spray, all right? Okay, mise en place is done. Now we need to take our wet ingredients and whisk them together in one bowl. We need to take our dry ingredients and whisk them together in a second bowl. And then we will add our dry ingredients into our wet ingredients and gently stir them just until they're combined. And then we'll add in our garnish. In my case, it's my frozen strawberries. I am going to reserve a 1/2 cup of my flour as well, and I'm going to toss those frozen strawberries so that will help prevent them from bleeding out a little bit when I toss them into the batter. All right, so we're going to get started with whisking together our dry ingredients first. So I'm going to add 2 of my 2½ cups of all-purpose flour into the bowl. I'm going to reserve a 1/2 cup and I'm going to toss my frozen fruit with it so it doesn't bleed into the batter and kind of leak out. All right, so I'm going to reserve a 1/2 cup of my all-purpose flour and just set it aside. Then I need 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And 2 teaspoons of baking powder. A pinch of salt. Iodized salt works better in baking and pastry because it mixes into the batter better. Just a pinch. And our cinnamon. A 1/2 teaspoon of our cinnamon. Same as the amount that went into the streusel part. Okay. And then we just whisk those together to get them mixed in. Next up, we have our wet ingredients. Sugar is usually included in with the wet ingredients, and we're going to be talking about that, or we may have already talked about that in class this week. Sugar is usually included with your wet ingredients. Brown sugar, you want to make sure you always pack it into your cup really well. So I've got 1 cup in there. Here's another third. Okay, so we've got that. Go ahead and break it up. We need 1 egg. There's teaspoons of vanilla extract. Our canola oil, 2/3 of a cup. I'm just going to reuse my milk cup here, my buttermilk cup. 2/3 of a cup. Okay. And our tablespoon of zest, whether you're using lemon or orange or lime. That's really going to make them be nice and bright. Zest, citrus zest, just really brightens up a dish. All right, and then we're going to whisk all the liquid ingredients together. We add our dry into our wet. That's the muffin method. I'm going to add that in all at once. That 1/2 cup of flour from my frozen fruit. I'm going to add that into the bowl and set it aside, and I'm going to add my strawberries in there in just a second. We're going to stir. I fold a little bit, I stir a little bit. We don't want to work the flour in too much because we'll develop what are called tunnels, and they're these like little wormholes in the muffins, and that also will tend to make your tops of your muffins do strange shapes. Instead of having a nicely rounded muffin, you'll have like a really pointy one, or you'll have one that's off to the side. So we're just gonna get those together. Okay, and this is the first time I'm doing this recipe just like you guys. Don't forget to clean in between, guys. So here's all my frozen strawberries. I'm just going to toss them in that last 1/2 cup of flour, and that'll kind of help. So we're just going to get them coated here. Once they're coated, we go in, get it all in there because we need that flour. All right, and then we finish mixing. And the folding method is the best way to go about this. Remember, folding, you're going down to the bottom of the bowl and turning it on itself, right? Fold it. Without trying to overmix them too much. There we go. That looks pretty good. Okay, our instructions say to fill them up to the brim. So that's what I did. Now, this is my only muffin tin, so I had to dig into my little loaf tin. You can use your muffin tin, let it cool down. I'm way too in a hurry, usually, to do that. So we're going to instead do some little quick loaves here with the rest of my batter. Okay. So For your muffin tins, you want to fill it up all the way. For a loaf pan, I don't think so. All right, I know the directions say to do that for your muffin tins, and that's going to give you nice, great big muffins, which is a good thing. But we don't want a loaf pan to be exploding all over our ovens. And your parents don't want a loaf pan to be exploding all over your oven. So I would say about 3/4 of the way full for. And we need to put our topping on. I'm going to start with putting it on my muffins because I want to make sure I get all 12 of my muffins covered nicely with the streusel. So try to get it on the muffins, not on your pan. Clean it off. It'll make cleanup a lot easier. You could use a tablespoon. You could use a scoop. I like working with my hands. You guys are going to see that a lot with me. I like the tactileness of touching the product. So close on the muffins, but as you can see, not quite yet. But on the bread, press it lightly. It springs back. So I'm going to take the bread out and do another 5 minutes on the muffins. These are sweet potatoes for dinner. All right, I'm going to call that done. And again, I think the reason mine took a little longer is because I really didn't pay attention to how much fruit. I just wanted to use up my strawberries. So we're going to let these cool in the pan for about 5 minutes per their instructions. And then we'll try to remove them. I think I'm going to let these cool down about 10 minutes before I try to remove them. Okay? Now you can also see why I say for a loaf pan or a cake pan, only fill it 3/4 of the way up, because we got some nice dome action going, and that was 3/4 of the way full, right? So don't fill it up all the way like the muffin tins if you're doing a loaf pan or a cake pan or something. All right,